Absolute pleasure having you here at the Tech Today Congress. If you've noticed, I've tried changing my wardrobe a bit so I look a little bit more like a gamer, yeah? I thought maybe it'll please the audience. But it's interesting because it's quite a critical time for gaming, just like we've been discussing AI, 5G, and what have you at this particular event. But Sai, I'd like to start off by asking you, it's been a roller coaster for MPL since you set up in 2018, consumption patterns in the pandemic, and now in 2023. What has changed at MPL and how are you charting the way forward?
Yeah, so firstly, I think it's never been a better time for gaming in this country. It is a privilege to be an entrepreneur in this country in this time for gaming, honestly. And I think the biggest thing that's changed is people, like, you know, how in the mid-60s or 70s people took to the movies in India and people just enjoyed movies a lot. Yeah. I think this 5 years to 10 years, people will be taking to gaming as much because you can, I mean, what Sean has done with their game, and I think what we are seeing across the board with a whole bunch of other games, this is time for that. And what is also happening also is the enabling regulations that are coming around it is actually giving a lot more confidence to game developers and also a lot more confidence to investors alike to, you know, build the ecosystem further. So I think those are probably my top 3 things.
Sean, a hot favorite, BGMI, and that's been the talk of the town. People have gone absolutely ballistic. In our office, they've been asking me, Sean's coming, ask him ABC about BGMI. People are excited. I mean, I'm guessing you're going to weigh in on that excitement in your answer, but how does it feel to get something as iconic back? Of course, under the new rules with a set of terms and conditions to ensure that everything happens smoothly. But how does it feel? Is it an iconic moment for KRAFTON as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I mean, I'm thankful for the government and the gamers who has been supportive for the last few months so that we can get the game back to the market, to the Indian market. And from like the corporate level, from the HQ also, we see this event as a like strengthening, you know, thing that we are more committed to the Indian market. And absolutely, like for the last few days since we launched the game, we are seeing enormous sort of welcoming, you know, trends in terms of user metrics and people's reactions. So I'm very thankful and happy.
What can we expect with the new BGMI edition, with it coming back? Gamers watching right now across the BT and the Tech Today multiverse will be watching and waiting with bated breath, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, like, we have been like slowly starting to you know, engage with the partners to start esports events. And also we started like small launching party for last couple of days. It will be on weekends too. So there will be fun, like, you know, fun. There will be a lot of fun, yeah.
Well, absolutely. Rajan, you know, it's interesting. We're talking about what Sai's been doing with MPL and what Sean's now doing with the host of titles at KRAFTON India. But when we talk about indigenous game development, make in India for games, where do you think we at this point are lacking? Why can't we have an iconic title like maybe a God of War or an Uncharted coming out of an Indian gaming studio at this point, Rajan?
No, thanks, Aayush, and pleasure to be here with you. And I think it's a very relevant question. You know, the fact that Sean is sitting here and so many others are looking at India as a market is because they believe that the future is here. I mean, the growth in the number of gamers, you know, we have about 420 million gamers, as I was mentioning. The fact that 1 in 10 people in the world is an Indian under the age of 25, which is, you know, the large category of gamers. I think it's only a matter of time before we see that happen. And I think the entire premise of JetSynthesys was built exactly on that same fundamental that, you know, there will be a time when Indian studios will create titles and also engage global gamers around subjects that are relevant not only to India, but even to the world. So for us, we've been able to do that with cricket. You know, in simulated cricket, we have a 65% global market share. We've been able to create a platform that is now getting people to play cricket, even though they don't understand how to play cricket in the real world. we did an India-US thing where one of the undersecretaries at the White House was the guest, and the US team beat India. Said, finally, US beats India in cricket, but it was electronic cricket, right? So the way you can take Indianness to the world could be through localized content here, but at the same time, we work with many large partners, including KRAFTON and others, to create markets in India, to see how we can build markets together in global countries. Because, say, Japan, India, for example, can be a very strong force, or Korea, India, for many other countries in the world too. So I think it is the time for India. I think what we really need is a commitment to building better talent. I think, we are too late to the game. Video game industry is a 50-year-old industry. And a large part of those who have created success globally are not sitting in India. And they're expensive talent. So we have to invest. We have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to build those kind of titles rather than the tens of millions that studios are spending today. And I think that shift is beginning to happen.
And in terms of exporting that sort of quality content, Sai, you've made a big move of late by foraying into the African market. And then now I am guessing you guys have presence in 4 continents with MPL.
Yeah, I mean, through our other companies. I think in Europe, it's through GameDeal, which is an acquisition that we made. But yes, you can say that. Yeah.
So is that safe to say, something that Rajan was saying to build on, that perhaps that's the product that we make in India and perhaps give a platform to the rest of the world? Is that a good start?
Yeah, of course, that is a good start. I think our philosophy right from day zero with MPL was that we believe eventually there will be a platform where massive tournaments, tournaments where there are hundreds or 200,000 people, maybe a player from America is competing against a player from Africa is competing against a player from India. And we need a platform to make that happen. And there's nothing out there that can do that today. If they want to run a BGMI World Cup, they can't do it, right? I mean, a fair World Cup where 100,000 people are playing and not just 5 people on a stage. And that's what MPL is in the business to make happen. MPL is in the business of enabling those kind of tournaments. And to Rajan's previous point on building world-class games from India, I believe India in the long term should be a net gaming exporter and not an importer. And to that effect, we about 2.5 years back started Mayhem Studios, and the goal is to build world-class gaming content from India. And there are many other studios in India. In fact, there are many, many good studios who are building these games, including the studios that Rajan runs. And to his point, it's just a matter of time. We started making 35mm movies. I think we will make IMAX movies as well. We are now making them. So it's the same with games as well.
I love how you draw that parallel with the content world, because this is far more engaging for a lot of us. Well, I'm a rookie gamer, not the pro gamers that Sean and you are used to. But I have another point that I wanted to make and actually get your views on it, Sai, which is when we're talking about some of the government rules that have come about recently, how do you view them as MPL? Very simply put, is it 1 step forward and 2 steps back, or is it the other way around?
No, I think it's 3 steps forward, to be honest.
No steps back?
No steps back.
Okay, fantastic.
I mean, fingers crossed, right? So in many ways, digital industries need, you can't draw a line and say these are the rules forever. You need a framework wherein rules can be debated and discussed and updated, like software, right? Imagine if you were using Windows 95 today. I'm sure life.
I'm sure some people are. Huh?
I'm sure, but I think it'll be a real problem to use it, right? The same is with rules for the internet age, right? Like you got to have the mechanism to keep updating those rules. And what is great about what we just saw in over the last few months is that the framework actually set it up in a way where it's, yes, 2-3 steps forward, but it also enables the ecosystem to keep improving itself with the requirements of what the industry and, in fact, more importantly, the consumers want. So that's my view. Yeah.
You mentioned the parallel, of course, with the content world. And out there, the question is subscription versus ads. And we're seeing so many players consolidating out there. Sean, I want to get your thoughts on this. How do you see the Indian market at KRAFTON, right? Is it a place where gamers are willing to pay, as opposed to perhaps what's happening in Africa, in Japan, or even in the US?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very valid question to ask for someone like KRAFTON. I think there were general perception from for gaming, global gaming companies that Indian market is not the market you can make money. You can get only
true?
data. I mean, you can get only active users, number of active users. That's been a perception since 2014, 15, 16, 17. But after we see the numbers through BGMI and other games, we found that it's not very similar to other markets in developed countries, but we could see that one or two best game in the genre is starting to make money. Not just user base, but also a certain number of revenues. And then that's why we decided to open an office, like hire the local people and continue to launch new games. I mean, the success will not happen every time, but I think that's how you enter the market.
Rajan, you want to weigh in on the subscription versus ads debate in the gaming world?
Yeah, no, actually, I think India is going to definitely create a new model of monetization, and we are seeing that. And I can tell you this because if you see this generation, right, I mean, the number of people who are spending time on gaming, the only way to reach them, they're not watching television, they're not reaching newspapers, there's no way to reach that audience. So I have a very strong fundamental belief that for brands to be able to reach those consumers, the kind of spend that you will see in a country like India is going to be distinctly different from what the rest of the world. Like KRAFTON always built games because, as I told you, and I think it's important for us to understand that earlier point. India never emerged as a mature gaming market because you needed to buy a console. Then it came PC and we didn't have internet access, right, to that extent, like what happened in Korea and Japan. And it's only when the smartphone and mobile has come, which is also where we have the lowest rates in the world, and the kind of mass usage, very hard to suddenly get people to spend. It's a $180 billion industry, larger than the entire movie industry, Hollywood, music, all put together. So I think India will create its own ways. There will be monetization happening, the way Sean mentioned. There will be monetization differently happening through, of course, brands getting engaged with these consumers in very unique ways. And we are seeing esports particularly being that one space where, people who are watching it and really engaging with the content. And that's why we say you don't only watch, you also play.
Absolutely. Sai, with MPL, it's a very unique proposition because you have casual games, fantasy sports, and then when we're trying to add a little masala with this whole subscription versus ads debate, how do you see what you're doing with the MPL business going forward? How will it be impacted by this?
Sure. So I think firstly, I agree with Sean completely that I think over the next 10 years, we will see probably 20 or 30 stories like BGMI emerge or games like that emerge in this country. And that's been the same with any country which has a very large young population, right? So it's about just patience. I think it'll happen. As far as I'm concerned, I agree with Rajan that there'll be Indian ways of monetizing games, right? And Indian ways of monetizing games, and since there's, the way we look at it, there's IAP, which, is the free-to-play market, then there is PCG, which we call the paid competition, where you pay a small entry fee to join a competition. And I also believe that in gaming, there is going to be a way, there's eventually going to be a monetization method where if Rajan owns a good-looking virtual good or a skin in the game, which I like I do in OLX or like I do in, say, Amazon, I'll pay money to Rajan and say, hey, Rajan, you know what, why didn't you sell it to me? And Rajan will sell it to me. And I think these are things that are bound to happen, and it's just a matter of time. And at MPL, we are very excited about it, right? We believe in these different monetization models, and we invest in all the different models. Yeah, barring ads. We don't have anything to do in ads. We'll work with Rajan on that one, where we'll work with him to host these.
Rajan, are you open to that offer?
We are taking the harder route. We are really working hard to get people, get engagement. But I think all points are very well taken. And I think this entire mix, once it unlocks together, I think that will be the Indianness impact to the world in gaming.
Rajan, how do you view some of these rules that have been introduced by the government for the gaming sector? There was a lot of uncertainty over time. The distinction between, what is gambling, what is gaming, this sort of clarity was sought for a very long time. Do you still think that we need a stronger form of regulation, light touch regulation, or is self-regulation the way forward? What do you think is the ideal approach?
So, I have chaired the Indian Digital Gaming Society. It's been anchored by the CII. 6-7 years ago, we said that gaming will become an industry in India. And I think it's really started to pan out, in that manner. Now, gaming is evolving in multiple ways, right? And I think it's demand from gamers, it's demand from citizens. It's an exercise and an effort for government and people to come together to really understand and appreciate what will be the Indian way of, of gaming first to evolve, and then the governance framework around that, right? And I think that is where we have reached today. I think, we are people who will say ultimately whatever is the law of the land and as it emerges is really what will define this. So that process, if you look at it the way it is happening today, is happening in a collaborative manner. It is happening now, beginning to happen, like as I mentioned, in a little more trusted manner. Self-regulation, look at different ways, let the industry come together, industry becoming responsible. So I think this is something that will evolve. And what will ultimately stay and what will ultimately, look like, I remember the earlier discussion also, because gaming also lends itself to a lot of data, right? Because it's a lot of engagement and time engagement. And how it really shapes up is really what will stay. And I'm very confident that the right things will happen for India, for the country, as well as the ability for India to influence and impact the world at large. Because as I said, I definitely see, an Indian winning an Olympic medal 15 years from today in the area of electronic sports, right? Maybe an individual medal which we still strive not to earn, because just the sheer number of people who will participate in that will be significant. So India is going to be a large player there, and I think we will be able to influence that in some shape and form. Of course, like Sean and both Sai have said, it's a matter of time and we'll get there.
Sean, it's a matter of time, but when we talk about, in fact, when Rajan was talking about, and Sai were talking about purchasing a skin in the gaming space, it sounded a lot like shopping in the metaverse. Now, I don't know what's happened to the metaverse and how the Web3 revolution shapes up. We're all firm believers in the potential of what can happen there. But gaming, for a lot of people in the audience, is genuinely, a lot of the games that are very popular, like BGMI, are like a precursor to the metaverse in terms of interaction, in terms of virtual avatars and some of the things that you can do. But Sean, we need to talk about disruptive tech even in gaming. And around the world, there's VR, there's AR. Are these some of the technologies that you guys are working on, perhaps, to increase your user base in markets like India and even around the world?
So I think it's a very good question, a timely question, given the change in the technologies. From our point of view, we have looked at certain VR projects using PUBG or BGMI IPs in the past. I think more disruptive technology that we are seeing is AI,
okay,
or deep learning, which actually enable like more efficient and more cost-saving or time-saving development process. I think we are now witnessing the beginning of that trend, and also this deep learning technology would enable certain new gameplays, which we haven't seen before. It's still yet to see, but we have some few pilot projects based on that. We haven't seen any commercially viable project yet, but I think there are many companies like us who are trying on this.
We have a stellar panel out here, and there must be a bunch of pro gamers or parents or siblings of pro gamers in the audience. So I'm going to request the mic. Here down the aisles, so if we can get a couple of questions from the audience. But until we build on that, Rajan, how do you see India generally attracting more investment in the gaming space? Are there things or steps that we can do to generally, we had a session earlier which was moderated by our editor at Business Today, Saurabh Majumdar, which was about a tech winter, right? And it's no secret. Sai can also chime in a bit, but what are the steps that we can take to really attract a lot more investment in the gaming world?
So, I think the investments in gaming are going to be both ways, right? I think your first question you mentioned is, when will an Indian studio create, global things? So the belief that an Indian studio will do that is itself. The ability for India to actually go out. So through Jetapult, one of our platforms, we are now investing in acquiring studios globally, because we truly believe that our understanding of gaming today has become mature enough for us to be able to create a global impact, right? I mean, so one way to look at it is that way. The other way, I think, what all the steps that we are seeing, right, giving comfort to investors in terms of the regulatory framework, in terms of understanding how monetization is getting enhanced in a country like India, that is making it viable for investors to come and look at India as a market to do that. And to my earlier point, and we see a great, push there, especially with some of our Japanese partners, etc., where India can be a super partner to the world when it comes to gaming. Right? Indian talent, as we know, has shaped every trillion-dollar tech company that there is. And the latest one has driven on gaming. So NVIDIA would join the club of Amazon and Alphabet and, the four company club of Microsoft and Amazon there is actually built on GPUs, which has been driven by gamers, right? So the time has come when I think the understanding of gaming, the ability for gaming, gamification, new technologies. I don't think there's a single technology that gaming will not adopt or adapt to quickly, right? Because inherently we're a digitized business. If you talk of AI, for 50 years gaming is using AI because when you're playing a game, you're being challenged just to that little level where you play a little better, right? So today when you look at AI, you look at AR, you look at VR, you look at blockchain, what Sai was mentioning, the ability to create virtual goods, the ability to, gaming is an early adopter of all of that. Generative AI today, I mean, you are saying something, create a virtual world and it's getting created. So I am a very strong believer that even if investments don't come directly in gaming, the investments that are coming into these technologies and the people who are going to drive these technologies are definitely going to be out of India.
Sai, do you share that view? And then I'm going to get to questions from the audience. So do prepare one or two very neat, tidy questions.
Yeah, of course. See, I don't, if you look at even the broader industry, gaming companies are actually quite okay, most of them, right? And if you look at even the last 1 year, there are a significant number of gaming studios that have been funded. A decent bunch of them, right? So I don't necessarily think that this impacts gaming or gaming industry as much. I believe this is a good time to hunker down and build, and just focus on putting lines of code up. So I think in that way, I don't see an issue. And to his point, the clarity in the ecosystem around what is allowed, what is not allowed, what is right, what's wrong. That's all that was needed. And that's, touch wood happening and hopefully will come to a conclusion sooner rather than later. And I think that will set up the stage for, a lot of mid-stage to late-stage investors showing up. Yeah.
Fair enough. I'm guessing the mic is out here. Okay, we do have someone who stood up first, so we must let that question. Please do state your name as well and a quick question, please.
Yeah, my name is Suresh. I'm playing this role of a father who actually has a teenager actually playing Fortnite and PlayStation for a lot. So let me be absolutely honest here. So one of the biggest pain when you are actually growing a teenager is that if they start playing games and stuff, getting involved, how are they going to focus on studies and academics, considering the part that the AI is actually ruling the whole world? So what would you suggest, considering the part that, the young kids can be attracted to some of these places very easily? So what is the level of restriction that the parents can actually look at it, and even the gaming industry, in the way that they are not carried away so much from there, and there is a point of time to do it. And people just get so fascinated they lose track of time and other stuff. That's kind of very alarming at this stage. And it's also some of these games are very focused on killing someone. So it also has negative impact in terms of psychology of working to that, which I feel there has to be some way to get this this.
So you'd like this question directed to
Rajan.
But before Rajan does come in, a little bit that I want to chime in with, there are a lot of those guidelines and rules do address some of these things, but Rajan, over to you.
Yeah, so I think valid point, and today I think the responsibility on game makers is also there to ensure that, when you are creating content it's how it is handled by the audiences. And you see this applying even to OTT, right? You talk of binge watching, right? You have one season ends in a particular way and people are watching. So this is actually a digital content consumption problem, right? It impacts different sets of people. Just so that one can talk a little bit on the positive side of gaming. At least gaming, there are a few positives, right? There is a lot of emphasis today when you're seeing like sport coming up, right? There's a lot of hand-eye coordination, sharp strategy thinking. There are a lot of good things that can happen, when you game and gamify things and do it correctly. It depends on the kind of content that, one is engaging with, right? And I think everybody is not made for, the same thing to do it in a particular way. So I think in a manner in which how one restricts or, creates an ecosystem at home, I think most families have been able to figure that out, particularly when it comes to, content consumption at large, right? I think digital and the phone being accessible to me is that medium, which is really a larger challenge there. But I don't know, Sean and Sai might have some other thoughts as well.
Sai? Sean?
Yeah. I mean, I think this reminds me of how my parents used to stop me from watching TV. When there's Cartoon Network had just come in India, and there's like immediately after you come back from school, SWAT cats used to play, and then Centurions, and then so on and so forth, all the way till 9 p.m. in the evening.
And then TNT.
Exactly, exactly. It's good. Very few people remember that, right?
Which we weren't allowed to watch, yeah?
Yes. So I think I'm not yet a parent, so I don't know. Is my honest answer. But I think that maybe you should have a very open and an honest conversation. And I think the most important thing to do is to not say that you can't do something. I think it's like, when my parents used to tell me, don't go and play cricket, I used to go play cricket more, right? So I think you should, I'm not the right person to be giving any such advice. I think, Sean.
I think I can give, not really on advice, I can share my experience as a parent. I have 3 boys, 10, 7, 4. And 7-year-old, my youngest, start now playing game, this one. So I share the pain, it's very difficult to kind of control the needs for the content consumption, especially when the device is now very portable and very convenient to handle around. But I remember when my father actually bought a Apple PC for me when I was maybe 9 or 10. He spent like 1 month's salary, maybe 2 months' salary to buy the PC and gave me. And then that actually gave me some responsibility feeling of responsibility to control how to use the PC, given that kind of like, the money he spent and his expectation on me on the self-control side. So actually that helps me to find how PC or computer can do a lot of things, not just gaming, but for also other things. Of course, I spend most of my time on gaming rather than other stuff. But actually that gave me needs to learn English, because back then all games was only available in English or Japanese. Anything not available in Korean. So I have to learn English to play the game. That opened up a lot of opportunity for me for the rest of my life, I would say. So I think you should, I'm trying to kind of make a narrative or story why you should do this, or why this game is important for you, or and things like that. I think that kind of share of responsibility, share of story in your life and their life, I think that makes things much easier.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, you can also gamify it by telling the kid, like,
Suresh, if you could hand over the
do this,
mic,
you can do this.
get a quick question.
Done?
Yes, please.
Yeah, great conversation. Really, like the online gaming going to get a lot of revenue also. My question is going to be a little bit put you on spot. While online gaming is so great, everything, there are other side of the online gaming. If you look at with the betting, okay, so a lot of things are happening, betting, and a lot of suicides are also happening in the country. So, are there any measures you guys are taking? Well, the gaming is good. Gaming with the betting and betting without control, how do you get that one? That's one part. Second part are the kids also. You all know about the blue whale, whatever happened. So what are the measures you guys are taking as the leaders of the gaming industry? How do you restrict and protect those particular pieces also?
Okay. Let's get that, because we have very little time on the clock. Sai, Rajan, Sean, who'd like to take that first?
Okay, I'll take the spot question. So No, it's a very important question. See, I think with any technology or any form of content, it's important to understand that the content will have positive impact and negative impact. The rules or the laws of the country are very clear on what is betting and what is not, and what it is, those websites, etc., have been actively blocked. In fact, it's very hard to make digital payments on those websites because most payment networks shouldn't work, ideally shouldn't work. And there's also meaningful grievance redressal in the, in the regulations that have been set aside. But beyond that, I think as companies, there are meaningful responsible gaming guidelines that we all adhere to. Meaningful advertising guidelines that we all adhere to. And I think those guidelines are free for everyone to see. And if there is any need to, if there's feedback, please feel free to share that feedback. I want to also say that the other example of what you just spoke about, the blue whale thing, that had nothing to do with gaming as far as I remember. It was with something else altogether.
Fair enough. Leading from the front, taking the questions on the spot.
Thank you.
We have very limited time. Now, Sean has already taken us down memory lane with his Apple PC experience. I'm going to go first and then leave it to the two of you all as well. In one word, my first tryst with gaming, Nintendo 8-bit and then a PlayStation 1. Sai.
Same, Nintendo 8-bit.
Rajan?
Atari.
Ooh.
He's the oldest guy on the panel.
Okay, that was just a quick way of summing it all up, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this session. Game on, and the next session is going to build on just this. Thanks so much. You've been an absolutely stellar panel, and you've been a lovely audience as well. Thank you.